here I come again, Jaja. Before your presence we singing. Yeah. Lord, watch over our shoulders tonight and help us live thy words tomorrow. Let's not forget where we're from. Father, show us the way to go. You said I must love and feed my enemies. You know, this targeting, it really forces many of us to sit down and really think and meditate and ponder on life, what we want from life, and what life has to offer us. Now, remember, I've said this over and over, okay, and I'm going to keep saying it because it's in keeping with the title of the podcast, and that is that this is a trial. We are being tried, okay? We are being tried. The wicked is doing this to us. Okay, let's not get sidetracked on this. This is what we are dealing with is very wicked. It's very sadistic. It is insidious. It is designed as a form of control from one aspect. Okay, because it gets some people, to fall in line, but in line with what? Okay, that's the question. The other thing, again, I'm just going to say again that, the definition, or just a general overall definition of what this is that we're dealing with, that this is a well-constructed and highly organized form of intimidation, social intimidation by groups of people, and it's leveled against an individual. Okay, now, and again, the victims and perpetrators can be from either gender, any race, any culture, any part of the world. It doesn't matter your political or religious affiliation. It doesn't matter your socioeconomic status. It is, in that regards, it is, as I said in a previous episode, this social evilness is an equal opportunity employer, okay? And so let's just stay clear on that. And yet at the same time, the Most High is allowing the wicked to test his children, not so that he can see or find out who we are, but so that we can find out who we are, because he knows us. He created us. He knows, remember, the scriptures say the steps of the righteous man are ordered. And we know man, we know that man is the name of the species that the Most High created. It covers man and it covers woman. Okay, womb plus man, woman, man. Okay, so it covers both genders, okay? But the steps of the righteous are ordered. So you think the Most High did not know that we would be going through this? Did not know that in these last days of this earth age, that the wicked would become so highly organized that they could definitely begin to carry out a well-orchestrated global assault? Okay, a stalking and hunting program against the righteous. Of course he knew that. Of course. Of course. So he made us. He knows what is going to become of us. Okay, but we don't know that. That's what this is. This is testing us. So when this craziness, when this cruelty, when this touchless torture, this adult bullying, this targeting, this stalking, when it gets to the point that we feel like we are just ready to lose it, that is when many of us will sit down and we will start to think about what it is that is happening. What do we want? Is what we're going through, is it worth it? Okay? Would it be better off to just, lose ourselves in drugs as a way to deal with this? To just ignore it? To just, go into la la land, or, spend some time, I don't know. I'm sure many of us have seen individuals who are, who use heroin, the way they just kind of nod off and go off into wherever it is they go and experience what they experience, and they leave this, what we're dealing with behind. Sometimes that might seem inviting. That might seem better to deal with that than what we're dealing with. Or maybe it would be better to just, lose it, snap, leap on the next person that does something to us, that performs some type of street theater in front of us, or some synchronicity this, or I don't know, some color coding that, and then we get, maybe arrested. Maybe we want to literally, beat them to a bloody pulp, and get a charge of mayhem. Okay, so. I'm serious. There comes a time when you literally will sit down and decide. And if you decide, no, I don't want to go the way of drugs, it's just not going to work. And I say this because for many of us, I know, speaking of myself and speaking of different people who, I've had the opportunity to meet through, the online communities and such, the Most High has given us, how would you say it, a heightened sense of survival, in the sense that we don't want to go out that way. We know that is not how we want to end our life. We don't want to end up in an insane asylum. We don't want to end up being, repeat offenders in jail, or end up with felony records, and or maybe end up being, in and out of drug rehab programs and so forth and so on. We don't want that. And also, we realize that there is this spiritual component to this. And I know for myself and for many others, there is, I strongly feel that this is really a physical manifestation of what is occurring in the spiritual realm, and that this is a spiritual war. That's what this is. And this is how it is being manifested in the physical realm, in forms of targeting, in the form of stalking, when we are being harassed, when we are dealing with, phone call, hang up phone calls, weird, coming in, checking your voicemail, and you've got, 50 messages, and they're all crazy, or they're all just, hang-ups, and it's happening at 1 in the morning, and then at 1:15 in the morning, and then, it just, come on, you know what I'm talking about. So we make a choice, and so we see that there is a spiritual side to this. So many of us, it's almost like, just like how you instinctively know to breathe, we instinctively know to turn to the Most High, to turn to the scriptures. We start praying. We start, living, a life. Some of the things that we were taught as children, they start to make sense. Do unto others as you would have others do unto you. And we know that what is being done to us we don't like it. It makes us angry. It hurts our feelings. It scares us, and we don't want to do that to anybody else, So we start to smooth out the wrinkles, okay? Okay, I think that might, we smooth out the wrinkles. We start to embrace the Most High. We start to keep His commandments, because we know that He is the source of strength. We start to see His hand at work in our lives. We start to literally see Him move some of our enemies from our path. And I've shared different experiences where, in starting to settle down, I began to recognize some of these individuals. They weren't just nameless, faceless strangers. It started to be certain people that were showing up, at the shopping mall or in the grocery store. It was always this same person who was always walking by this particular bus stop in the morning, but it was another person at the bus stop down the street and around the corner in the evenings. I started to recognize them, and I just started, to just notice different people at work who were participating in this. And that's the part that's called, some people refer to it as the workplace mobbing. Who were these individuals? And then you just start to see a little bit more about them and their life and their background and how they live and how are they getting along with everybody. How is it that they can have time to treat me in such a vile, unfair, cruel way? How are they treating other people? And then, of course, as someone, I met a gentleman. I was staying at a shelter. He shared with me something, and I'd never looked at this before, but he was saying that, he was talking about the abyss and how sometimes experiences, we weren't necessarily talking about targeting, because this was a time in my life I didn't know that this was called targeting. I knew that I was going through something and that there was a spiritual component to it. I knew that it was satanic attacks, but I didn't know that it was, this highly organized and so forth and so on. So he was talking about how problems in life can seem like an abyss, can seem really overwhelming. And he said that, I remember he said that we forget that while we're in front of this abyss, that it feels like the abyss is just that the abyss is in control, that the abyss is holding all the cards, can attack us and do all this, but we forget that there's two parties involved in this. We tend to give our power to the abyss. This is as he was referring to it, okay? We give all of our power to the abyss. The abyss sees us. It knows our weaknesses. It knows our flaws. It knows, our going out, our coming in, rising up, laying down, everything. He said, but we forget that we're also looking at the abyss as well. Or we can look at the abyss. And I thought about that, and I finally got it. I understood what he was saying. And so from then on, these individuals who at first would seem like I was giving them all my power, giving them all my fear, just getting nervous and intimidated when they would walk by the bus stop or, at work when they would do things and, gather with so-and-so over here by the copy machine and, yeah, that's just and blah, blah, blah. And, sneer and, do the whistling and, do the different, signals and stuff that they do. But I learned to look at them, and realize, who are they? This is how they treat me, but how do they treat this person? And how does this other person treat them? How is, Jane is doing this to me, but what is Jane's relationship with Sally? Who are Jane's enemies? What is she like? What are her flaws? What are her weaknesses? If you can understand what I'm saying, I started to look at the abyss, and it started to change it, okay? But this was something that, came about over time, with experience. I wasn't doing this in those, like I said, when I became really aware of this, on that cross-country trip on that Greyhound bus. I wasn't aware of this at the time. I just was aware that these people were doing this to me, and it was very, out there and crazy and creepy and scary. I was in that mode. But over time, as, the years rolled by, I started to develop that. And so when he said that to me, it had a calming effect. I was able to stand back and look at these specific individuals and realize, when they get a cold, they have to blow their nose too. They have to put their, pants on, one leg at a time, the same as I do. They have, enemies that don't like them. And, I just started to realize these people, they're able to, they're all in unison when it's time to mess with me. Okay. But other than that, a lot of them, they tend to not even like one another. They wouldn't hang out with each other. They backstab each other. And so in keeping with that, in terms of now putting the filter of the scriptures over this, which is the word of the Most High, learning to read these scriptures and understand and interpret and get what's going on, I began to see how the Most High uses the wicked. And And that is the most, again, can be a source of strength to realize that they are not all powerful, that these individuals are not, all knowing. These people are dealing with drug addictions. These people are dealing with poverty. They're dealing with, family problems, relationship crisis, the same as everyone else. They're affected by the economy, the same as everyone else. I mean, they just started to come down to the earth, to be mortals, to shrinking down to what they really were. I quit giving them that type of power and control over me. And that, was a very, it started to feel, I started to feel not, like relieved and happy and, hey, it's all over with, everything is great. No, it doesn't work like that. But it became a bit more manageable. Maybe that would be the word, or the adjective that I would use. But the scriptures helped, because like I said, I began to see it from that perspective and gain, the understanding that this is spiritual. And I knew, that people were also looking at it from a political point of view and, the military and what they were doing, that these weapons were, originally that's where they came from. Maybe that's not what they were originally. The way they're being used now, these direct energy beam weapons, the way they're being used now was maybe it was not meant to be used against citizens, private citizens, but that's the way it's being used now. But I know that people were looking at it from that point of view, but I was looking at the spiritual point of view, and I still do. I don't, disregard or discount what they are saying in terms of the technology and, just different, political leaders who are giving a go-ahead, and a thumbs up on doing this, but in the end, this is all spiritual, and that's what I wanted to. I just wanted to start with that, and also to say that when you start to look at it from a scriptural point of view, again, it became very clear to me as I started reading this. I mean, individuals who I had known about before and read about before, I began to see it through that filter. Like I grew up knowing about, the story of David, as a shepherd, and, what he went through with with Saul, and, how Jonathan became his friend, and, and his, married the daughter, and, on and on with the son, and, all of that. I knew all about that. I was familiar with that, but I had never seen it through this filter. This brother was being stalked. These people were targeting him. They did not like him when he had that affair with the woman that the scriptures call Bathsheba. When he had her husband killed, I mean, how they were able to use that and gaslight and twist and turn that. I mean, it was already, that in and of itself was a bad thing to do. Okay, I'm not trying to downplay what he did, but how they were able to take that and use that, and just reading different psalms and the way he described what he was going through. Was he being woken up at night with spiritual attacks? Okay, was that what was happening to him? What was it that made him cry? What was it that made him sit up at night, in the night watches? What was it that, I started to see that. And again, as I mentioned, with looking at the Messiah. And again, that's why I took my time and I went through and I read to you these passages where you literally read the phrases, and they communed. These wicked people literally got together, put their heads together, and talked about what they were gonna do to him. Surely you can see the comparison where what is happening to you, let's say on the workplace or in the apartment complex or in the dormitory that you're staying at, that these people, that this is orchestrated. This is orchestrated. They're just not all of a sudden individually just happen to stumble upon the same attitude and behavior towards you at the same time. They all just didn't pull it out of thin air. No. They got together, sat down, talked about you. As the saying goes, they threw you in the blender. Okay, they put the cap on, they put the top on it, and they hit parade. Or, you know what I'm saying? Or they hit dice. Okay, and they just started going through your life. And this is what she does. This is what she's majoring in. She's got this class in the morning, but I know in the afternoon she's got this class over here. It's on this side of the campus, and so, he'll be down to helping us out. I mean, they literally did this. What are your weaknesses? What are your flaws? Get her. Maybe she's doing really good in this class. She gets along good with the professor. He might actually want her to be the TA, but if we can, get her to do this and do that and say this, where the little gaslighting comes in. If we can get, manipulate her words and do this and do that, then maybe she won't be, this is what they did. The conversations were taking place. Okay. And this is literally what they did to our Messiah, to our King. And we look in the book of John. One of the things that he told us, he said straight up, he said, if they hate me, they will hate you. Let me see if I can find that. Just John, just looking in chapter, let's go. Chapter, the book of John, okay, in the New Testament. If we look in chapter 15, what does it say? He told them very clearly, and he left this here. It's been preserved for us, okay, for those of us who believe in him, for those of us who know in him. Forget believe in him. Now we're at the point of we know in him, okay? If the world hate you, ye know that it hated me before it hated you. If ye were of the world would love his own. But because ye are not of the world, but I have chosen you out of the world, therefore the world hateth you. Remember the word that I said unto you, the servant is not greater than his master. If they have persecuted me, they will also persecute you. Okay, there it is. Okay, so we look at that now from a different perspective. Okay, and that's why I want to share something else, because as I mentioned in the last episode, I think it was, that I think one of the ways, the most vicious, insidious form of gang-stalking that they did to the Messiah was they took away his name, and in the place of that name that was sent down from heaven, in place of that, they put the name of a pagan deity, Jesus. That's a Greek god. I think it's the Greek god of, Jesus is connected with Dionysus, and Dionysus is, I think it's like the Greek god of wine or something, and there might be a connection with healing or something like that, but that's what they did. Okay, and that's one of the reasons why these people who, are really, that maybe that non-Christians who do not, who, tend to discredit and, just want to downplay Christianity, they can use that, against a lot of believers, a lot of Messianic believers. And they say, well, his name used to be this, and now they call him this. And, look, there's a lot of these non-Christians, these different targeteers, okay, who they know the weaknesses and the flaws that are embedded in this pagan Christianity that has taken root, okay, and that is now being, swallowed whole by these unsuspecting Christians who are in these mainstream religions, who do not have the sense or the wherewithal or the desire, okay, to literally study and learn the truth, okay? But a lot of these people who are against the church, they know this, and they use it. They throw it up in their faces, and they don't know how to deal with this. And so don't be too surprised if that is something that they do to you. When they learn, when these different targeteers and stalkers, when they're watching you and they see you now, you've got a Bible that you're keeping with you, you're reading your Bible, in between classes, or you're reading the Bible during your lunch break at work, maybe you go off to the side and do a silent prayer. I mean, they're watching this, they know this. And so don't be surprised if that starts to happen, if they start to come around and start, putting down Christianity and putting down the church and talking about, the different, mega churches and these mega ministers and what they're doing, trying to, again, attack you, to try to, try to find the chinks in your armor, okay? And that, but, if you are diligent and if you do your studies, if you really learn to get beneath the surface of what mainstream pagan Christianity is, then you know the truth. You know that, like for the example that I just gave, we know that his name wasn't Jesus. We know that it wasn't Jesus. We know this. Okay? We know this. But one of the things that I'm pointing out is that was done. We know that was done because his name, when we read what the Malach, the messenger, told Mary, his name was connected with salvation. And so in this war, this war that is not of flesh and blood, one of the things that the wicked, that the enemy has done, is they've taken his name away. Why? Because they don't want us to have salvation. So they took the name away. His name is a weapon. His name is power, is a form of power. So they took it away. And I think that it's a form of gaslighting. Another form of gaslighting that they did was that they changed his color. They changed his ethnicity. Now I'm saying ethnicity and color because at the time, during the life of the Messiah, this idea of race that concept as we know it didn't even exist. People dealt with nations. You dealt with nationalities. You dealt with cultures. You did not deal with race. The idea of three different races that's something that came in the 1800s out of like Eastern Europe. Okay, and that's just the truth of it. But they took his culture, they took his color, his complexion, they took that away, and they put in place a white person. They put a European. They put a Caucasian, a descendant of Japheth. That's who they put in there. And that is a form of gaslighting. And I know some people don't want to deal with that, but I'm sorry. I definitely think that is something that needs to be talked about. And the reason I think it needs to be talked about is because when you start to get these truths and they start to become a part of your foundation, which makes it possible for you to keep walking this road, which makes it possible for you to endure these tactics that these stalkers and these targeteers are doing to you, then there is a feeling of gratitude and respect and love for the Most High, that He is covering you, that He is moving you away. He's moving you out of the reach of your enemies. And that gratitude is transferred into wanting to share it with others. It becomes part of the good news, because when you, over time, with experience, you're going to see other people who are dealing with this. That's the other thing that happens, is you're going to start to recognize there's other people that are dealing with this. And that's something that I experienced. There were different people I can remember in some of the shelters that I was in and also that I worked at, that I can think of one right now where this woman was sharing with me something that had happened. I think I mentioned her in a previous episode, where she had been a part of a political campaign in another part of the country, I think down in the southeast. And she had been outspoken, and basically the end result was she started being targeted. She got fired from the job. They ended up messing with her pay. I think family, turned on her, wouldn't really help her out. She ended up being homeless. She ended up coming, to over on the West Coast. And I remember her telling me that she was having problems with her phone. I mean, just all kinds of things. And I look back now and I realize, okay, this woman, that was clearly, she was, now I know I know the terminology. She was being targeted, and she was dealing with, the phone calls, the hang up phone call campaign and such. But at the time, I recognized that she was being, stalked and dealing with, satanic attacks. But I didn't have the, enough experience to share with her, to talk to her as I would be able to now. Okay. And, but see, when you get this, when the Most High starts to help you and put you on firm ground, okay, and gives you the strength and the wherewithal, you'll start to see other people, and you'll be able to help them out. And that's part of the good news, because there's no way, it's impossible to have good news and keep it to yourself. I mean, it can be done, okay? But, you find out, you get a raise, you get happy, and you do kind of want to share it with somebody. Or maybe, I don't know, you that manuscript got accepted by that editor or that publisher, and you do want to share it, I mean, it's impossible to keep good news to yourself. And The other thing that happens is that your boundaries, your standards change. Because you have been a victim of lying, because you have been, a victim of deceit and lost friends and loved ones and had intimate relationships destroyed behind liars, behind people who were noodlebacks, who didn't stand up and tell the truth, who abandon you, when it got thick, when the battle got, hot. These were the ones that left you hanging. Your standards change, and you don't appreciate people like that. You don't appreciate liars. You don't appreciate deceivers, okay? And so when you start to realize how our Messiah has been lied on, how he has been just the victim of just some of the most insidious hatred and cruelty in the world, you start to take offense to that. I mean, this is someone who is an older brother. He is a friend. He is a confidant. He is the one who's going to bat for us. He laid down his life. He let them shed his blood, knowing that his blood was pure, knowing that his blood was without spot, that it could be used to cleanse, that it could be used and can be used. It can be used to cleanse. It can be used to heal. It can be used to protect. It can be used to redeem. It can be used to save. Because he was innocent, because he was pure, because he was noble, because he was upright. Think about how you feel about your mom or your dad or that caretaker who really took care of you. And then if you maybe have had the experience where someone did something to them, how it angered you, how it made you upset, how you wanted to go up to that person who, was saying something about your grandmother, saying something about, Big Mama, how you wanted to go up and, and get up in their face and, say, no, don't do that. And you didn't, but you wanted to. Now just amplify that by 1,000 times. And that's how I feel, and how many of us feel, realizing what they've done to our Messiah. Okay? And then on top of that, add to that just what he said straight up. If you're not going to confess me, I'm not going to confess you. Anyone who is ashamed of me and my words, I'm going to be ashamed of them. He made that very clear. And so there's no getting around that. But let's look at something here. I want to just share something with you, okay? Because I think that it's like we know and we acknowledge and we say, we talk about, these truths that are starting to come to light, but I don't think it really sinks in. So I'm just going to share something with you. Okay, this is in the book of Exodus. This is chapter 24, and we're going to start at verse number 9. Okay, it reads, Then went up Moses and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Yasharun. And they saw the Elohim of Yasharun, and there was under his feet, as it were, a paved work of a sapphire stone. And, as it were, the body of heaven in his clearness. And upon the nobles of the children of Yasharun he laid not his hand. Also, they saw Elohim and did eat and drink. Okay, there it is. That is like when you can read through and understand what is being said, just like how I went through and gave you the underline the definitions of the actual Greek words that are used in that verse in Peter. When you look at the words that are the meanings of the words, the actual Hebrew words that were used there, then you understand what is being said here. Now, when you break it down, the key verse is verse number 10. And the first thing it says is, and they saw the Elohim of Yasharun, or Israel. That's what it says there. And it says, and there was under his feet, as it were, a paved work of a sapphire stone. Okay, so they saw this supernatural being, and it says that the supernatural being was standing on something that was like a sapphire stone. Okay. And then it says, now if you're not paying attention, you would think that it's still talking about the stone, but it's not. It says there's depending on, your version, this is the KJV, but it says, okay, as it were a paved work of a sapphire stone, comma, and as it were the body of heaven in his clearness. Okay, now see, clearly they're not talking about the stone anymore, because they've given in this phrase, they said his, okay, but in the previous phrase or clause they said of a sapphire stone, as it were. Okay, so you have a stone and then you have a being, which is clearly male, that is standing on the stone. And the key word here that makes it very clear what's happening here, it says, in the body, as it were, the body of heaven, in his clearness. Okay, so clearly it's talking about a person. But let's look at that body. It says the body was, as it were, the body of heaven. Okay, now we know that in the scriptures, in this, the way that it's translated, heaven, if you know if you understand what's happening, heaven, in modern terms, in our terminology, we would say space or outer space. Okay, but many of us, when we see heaven, because we've just read a phrase that talked about a sapphire stone, many people would think, in their mind's eye, they would see the color blue. They would think sky. They wouldn't, or most people associate, when you say heaven, they think of the sky during the daytime, and they think blue, or like a light blue or something like that, sky blue, whatever. But when we understand the way the scriptures are written, depending, you've got the word heaven in modern time, we would say, in our modern, vernacular, we would say space or outer space. And just to prove that, if you go over to Genesis, this is a way to read the scriptures. It's referred to, you do, like line upon line, precept upon precept. So we're talking about a precept here. But you look at heaven, or this is what I'm calling a precept. If you go into Genesis, the first chapter. Yeah, just go Genesis chapter 1 and start at verse 7. And Elohim said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven. Okay, there we go. To divide the day from the night. And let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and for years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven. And it was so. And then verse 16, and Elohim made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. 17, and Elohim set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth. Well, okay, we're talking about the sun and the moon. We're talking about the stars. Where do the stars sit? They sit in space. They sit in outer space. But in the scriptures, they use the word heaven. So going back to Exodus, you've got a supernatural entity that is standing on a slab of stone that is like the color of sapphire, okay? And then it says, in describing his body, it says that his body was as the heavens. What color is the heavens? What color is outer space? It's black, okay? There it is. It's black. This man was black, okay? Not dark brown, not light brown, not tan, not white, not pink, okay, not yellow, black. We know the heavens are black. Outer space is black. It's very black. In fact, when you go back to that, the very last part of that makes it clear. It says straight up, and as it were, the body of heaven in his clearness. When you look at that word clearness, that's, if you go to a Strong's Concordance, it's going to be if you look in the Hebrew, it's going to be, the word is 2892. Okay. And I'm just going to pull out my concordance over here just to read this to you so that you can get an understanding of what's happening. The word, okay, 2892, it says, Tohar from 2891, literally. Okay, now 2891 is literal brightness, ceremonial purification. It says that it came from 2891. So when you go to 2891, that's the root. It says a primitive root, properly to be bright, i.e., by implication to be pure, physical, sound, clear, unadulterated. And it means uncontaminated. Okay, so basically what we're talking about, if you understand what's going on, is that it's saying that he was pure black. Okay, that's what that means. Clear. I mean, from our perspective, we have a different culture, so we look at things differently. When we think clear, we want to think like transparent. We're thinking like a clear glass, or a clear window. Okay, but that's not what that means. It's talking about the fact that he was not. He was pure black. He was pure. He was pure black. He was not. He was not biracial. He was not. I don't know how to, without getting, and he wasn't like, how like Obama said he was like a Heinz 57. I think Obama said that about himself one time. So basically this is the opposite of that. He wasn't a Heinz 57. He was clear. He was pure. He was pure black. That's what that means. He was pure black as the heavens. Let's say it that way. As black as outer space. Maybe that would be a better way to say that. And while that might sound offensive to someone, that's really what this is literally saying. That the being that they saw, that the God of Israel that they saw standing on that slab of sapphire stone was as black as space. That's really what that's saying. Okay, and it might sound offensive, it might sound rude, but that's really what it's being said. And you might say, well, what does that have to do with the Messiah? Well, if we turn into the New Testament, remember, line upon line, precept upon precept, here a little and there a little. If we go to the book of Colossians, looking at, let's start with chapter Colossians, and we go to chapter 1. Okay, just starting at, what does it say here? Just starting at chapter 1, verse 4, starting at 12. Giving thanks unto the Father, which hath made us meet to be partakers of the inheritance of the saints in light, who hath delivered us from the power of darkness, and hath translated us into the kingdom of his dear Son, in whom we have redemption through his blood, even the forgiveness of sins, who is the image of the invisible Elohim, the firstborn of every creature. So it's saying right there that we know that the Messiah is in the exact image of Elohim. He's in the exact image of his Father. As he said, very many of us are familiar with the passage in the book of John, what he said to Philip, when Philip had asked him, show us the Father, and he said, have I been with you this long? Basically, when you see him, you see the Father. This is where they look identical. He looks like his Father, okay, who is the image of the invisible Elohim, the firstborn of every creature, for by him were all things created that are in heaven and that are in earth, visible and invisible. Okay, so what is that saying right there? That he created, that the Messiah, Yahushua, that he created everything through the Father, okay? And when he says he created the invisible and the visible, that means the spirit realm and this earthly realm. Our Messiah created that. So these fallen entities, okay, the enemy who they worship is a created being, and he is, in the end, he will be subjected. He will be under the subjugation of our Messiah, of our King, of our Master, Yahushua HaMashiach. That's the truth of this, okay? Visible and invisible, whether they be thrones or dominions or principalities or powers, all things were created by him and for him. That's our Messiah. That's who that's who we worship. That's who we praise. That's who we reverence. When he came down here, he was subjected to targeting, to gang-stalking at a level that we probably cannot ever comprehend, because we have weaknesses and we have flaws. Okay, we have probably in our youth, in our young adult, in our teenage years, treated people similar, to the way to the way that we have been treated. In the sense, come on, man, how many of us have been in situations at parties where we called people and did hang up phone calls on people? Okay. How many times have we gotten in someone's face and picked a fight with someone? I can remember, in school, and junior high and, middle school, the last day of school, you got into fights. You finally got to beat up the person that you wanted to beat up all year long. You got to throw eggs at people. I mean, we were not perfect like him. He was. And in his perfect state, they hated him. They tormented him. They stalked him. They gaslighted him. They took his name. They insulted him by giving him the name of a fallen deity, of a fallen entity, a fallen messenger, Jesus. They took away his ethnicity. They took away his color. And in the image that most people think of when they praise the man who they call Jesus Christ, most of those images are based on a man named Cesare Borgia, who was an adulterer, who was incestuous. He had sex with his sister. It's rumored that he might even have fathered one of her children. He was a poisoner. He was a very vicious man. That's who they used. Can you not see that is a form of gaslighting, that is a way to defame who our Messiah really was? This was a man who fed people, who fed over 5,000 people. This was a man who healed people. This was a man who gave his very life, his blood. As I just read to you, it says right here, his blood was so pure, 1 Corinthians 1:14, in whom we have redemption through his blood, even the forgiveness of sins. His blood is so pure that we can be forgiven through it. Okay? This is how pure he was. And look at what they did to him. Look at what they did to him. I can't... There's more that I can say, but I'm at the 45-minute mark, and I know that some of you are okay with it being this long, and I'm okay with that too. But I know that some of you are not. But I just shared with you Exodus 24. It explains very clearly in the Torah, in the second book of the scriptures of the Old Testament. It gives you a description, but because the lens that we have, be it on purpose or not, it doesn't. If you don't know how to break those words down, you really think that what it's talking about, that it's still talking about the stone. You think that it's talking about the sapphire stone, okay? That the slab, that it was in sapphire, but then it was also kind of pure. But the first clue that that's not what it's talking about is in that where it says right here, and as it were the body of heaven in his clearness. It's talking about a person that was standing on the stone. That's why it uses the word his, okay? Because it's a person, it's a man. They saw a man, okay? And it says that describing his body, it says that as it were the body of heaven. Okay, he was black. He was as black as space. That's what they're saying. That's clearly what they are saying, that the deity, the quote-unquote God of Israel, is black. That's what they're saying, and now it's making a distinction. It's letting us know very clearly that it's a pure black. Okay, black as ebony, black as licorice, black as space. That's how black it is. And that clearness, if you can understand that, and that's where it gets a little complicated or convoluted for a lot of people, because when we think in English, in modern vernaculism, in our modern vernacular, we think of clear. We would think of something transparent. We would think of glass, but that's not what that means. It means in terms of his color, that it was pure black. It wasn't brown. It wasn't a dark brown. It wasn't a light brown. It was pure black. That's what that is saying. Okay, and there it is. And see, I know this, and I'm going to talk about this. I'm going to share it. I'm going to proclaim it. Why? Because I understand now clearly, looking through this lens of stalking and targeting, what they did to him, and that is a form of gaslighting, that they would take his name, that they would change his color and his ethnicity, and the image of the person that they used to replace him was one of the most vile, immoral, reprehensible men to ever walk the earth. They could have used an anonymous fruit vendor from the streets of Rome, but they chose to use a man who was suspected of poisoning and murdering his own brother, a man who was suspected of rumored to have fathered one of his sister's children. This was a man who regularly would have criminals brought in and line them up in his garden and practiced using his crossbow on their bodies, using their bodies as targets. Hello, targets, okay? This is a man who one time got so angered by a balladeer, a singer who wrote a song about him that criticized him. He had that man's tongue cut out. They used this person. Okay, they used that individual, they used his image to represent the Prince of Peace. Okay? Is that making sense? Can you see how in a weird kind of twisted way that is a form of gaslighting? And then also, in case you don't know this, that name Jesus, okay, also when you break it down in terms of its syllables, the first part, okay, the J would have been an I, which basically you're looking at Lord. If you when you break it down and you look at what these words mean in terms of syllables, and the sus means pig. Okay, now we know that pigs in the law, in the Torah, that's an abomination. Okay, so you're going to also, when you do a play on words on that word Jesus, just using a play on words, another way you could play with it is that it means Lord Pig. That's what you're going to call the name. That's what you're going to call the Son of the Most High. Come on. Please tell me that. Please, if you hear this on YouTube, leave a comment and tell me that you understand what it is that I'm trying to say, what I'm saying to you, how they gaslighted this. Man, I don't know. I mean, I guess I could just be the broken record and keep talking about it over and over again, but I hope that you get it. Okay, that our Messiah was a targeted individual, that they used gaslighting on him, that they stalked him, that they spied on him, that, the passages that I read where they tried to twist his words. One of the reasons they were trying to twist his words is so that people wouldn't follow him. Isn't that Isn't that what many of us are dealing with? Isolation. What they do to us, they lie on us, and they take events, they take them out of context, or they exaggerate them so bad, and they do this to individuals in our family, at work, who maybe don't have the wherewithal to see through the subterfuge, and so they distance themselves from us. That's what they were attempting to do to the Messiah. When it says that they sent men to spy on him, to find what he would say so that they could use the words against him, that's what they were attempting to do, to isolate him so that people would not follow him. Okay, can you see that is a tactic of gang stalking that is done to us, that they did that to him, the Son of the Most High? Okay, a man who was innocent, who was pure, who his ministry was one of charity, his ministry was one of healing, his ministry was one of feeding thousands upon thousands of people. 5,000 people, that's a lot of people. And I've worked with Food Not Bombs and sharing food with the homeless. I've worked making sandwiches for people, making lunches for people. Do you know how many years I would have to work in order to literally feed 5,000? That's just one time. There was another time I think he fed, it was like 2,000 to 4,000 people. This is what he did. Okay, this is how he lived his life. And yet, look at what they did to him. Okay, and then reading into the book of Acts, how even after he was gone, how after he had ascended up into heaven, his name still had such power that those who did believe in him, those who did worship him, those who knew who he was, they were able to literally heal people behind his name. Read in the book of Acts. Read chapter 4, where Peter and John, how they healed that the man that was crippled. And what they said to him, how they sent the temple guards to grab them. And what was the one thing that concerned them? The one thing that they really harassed them about. They harassed them about what name did he use. Okay, they didn't mind that the guy had been healed. They were just upset by the name that he used. Okay, that they beat them, and they told them to not do any more works using the name of the Messiah. So is it just a coincidence that they took that name away and they gave us a name that is one, Jesus, that is the name of a pagan, a fallen Moloch, and two, with a play on that words, it means Lord Pig? Please tell me that you understand that. Please tell me that you get that's what they did. Okay, but this our Messiah, our Master and King, who gives us strength so that we can endure and stand up in the face of this type of opposition, whose blood is literally able to cleanse us of our sins, to cover us with protection. This is the man that they put this through. And when we develop a relationship with him and a love for him and a love for the Father, then we want to proclaim him. We want to defend him. We want to tell the truth about who he is. So yeah, I'm going to tell you about that scripture in the book of Exodus. I'm going to tell you, about that passage in the book of Colossians. Okay, I'm going to do that. I'm going to tell you the truth because I care about him, because I love him, because of what he did for me. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be sitting here today sharing with you my testimony. There's no way. There's just no way. I've thought about that on many occasions. On many occasions. If it was not for him, for the love and mercy, and him mediating my cause at the throne of the Most High, giving the Most High a reason to extend his grace and his love to me, I would be dead today. I know this. I don't have the strength to fight these people. I don't have the weapons. I don't have the wherewithal. There's just no way I can. I have tried. I've tried in the past, before I turned back to the Most High. I tried. My flesh got in the way. It made the problem even worse. Okay, and maybe I should share that with you. Share some experiences on how I tried to literally trying to use my own flesh as a way to deal with this and the problems that I got into. Okay, and it just didn't work. Okay, Luke chapter 12, starting at verse 8. Also I say unto you, whosoever shall confess me before men, him shall the Son of Man also confess before the Malachim of Elohim. But he that denieth me before men shall be denied before the Malachim of Elohim. That's what he's saying. You confess me, I'll confess you. You don't confess me, I'm not going to confess you. Now see, I take that to heart, and that is not going to happen to me. Okay, I'm going to be the one who's going to use this podcast to talk about this truth. And if you truly have a problem with it, if you really don't want to hear the truth, well then, by all means, turn this off and keep it moving. Because I'm not going to hem and haw and say sweet, nice things so that you feel okay and you feel comfortable and you always stay and, and hit the thumbs up and always, like me and, always just really love my videos and no, I'd rather have the Most High welcome me into the kingdom because his Son has defended and advocated for me, and have 0 subscribers than have 1,000 gazillion subscribers and end up not having anybody standing up for me at that throne and me being slapped by the holy fire, because it says that his throne, that it's pure flame, and that we are impure, we cannot come near his throne, that it shoots out fire. The Messiah is pure enough to stand between us and the flame and mediate for us. I'm sorry, I would rather offend you than offend him. I would rather confess him and offend you than not confess him and somehow have your approval. That's not going to happen. But I know I'm not going to get your approval anyways, because I know I've been gang-stalked enough and dealt with this, been dealing with this targeting for enough times that I get it. I understand it. Matthew 10, verse 32. Whosoever therefore shall confess me before men, him will I confess also before my Father which is in heaven. But whosoever shall deny me before men, him will I also deny before my Father which is in heaven. So there it is, and I can't afford to have him deny me. Not going to happen. Okay, this fiery trial, episode 14. This is Abora, editor-in-chief for artisticministry.net. And I say shalom.
Thanks for all that you have done and for what you're doing now. I am not saying I might not do wrong again, but I promise this time I'll be a better friend. And lift up my eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my help. I have come from Selassie, which created Zion and the earth.